Harry Mpepetwa Themba Gwala was born on 30 July 1920 near Pietermaritzburg. He was a politician and teacher. Gwala was known as Muntu Omdala, or the Lions of the Midlands. After completing his teacher's diploma at Adams College, Amanzimtoti in 1941, he taught at Slangspruit in the Pietermaritzburg area. Among his students was Moses Mabhida, who later became a prominent figure among SACP members in exile. Gwala joined the South African Communist Party in 1942 and the African National Congress Youth League 2 years later in Natal. It was during this time that he began organizing workers in the chemical and building industries and established the Rubber and Cable Workers Union in Howick. However, as many of the workers were migrant laborers, it was difficult to maintain permanent structures. In 1950, he was one of the organizers of the National Stairway of Workers. He was consequently listed under the Suppression of Communism Act in 1952 and was served a 2-year banning order. He found employment at the Edendale Hospital, but was dismissed for recruiting hospital workers to become members of the South African Council of Trade Unions. After the banning of the ANC in 1960 and again in 1963, Gwala became active underground until his arrest in 1964 for sabotage and for recruiting members for Umkhonto weSizwe. He was sent to Robben Island for 8 years. He was released in 1962, but was restricted to Pietermaritzburg. As a result, he could not pursue his teachings or trade union activities. He then ran a laundry collection business in the area. Despite the restrictions he was subjected to, he remained at the forefront of attempts to revive SACTU, which at the time was dormant, owing to the many detentions and bannings. He was detained again in 1975, and towards the end of 1976, Gwala and a number of other ANC stalwarts were arrested as a result of their involvement in a workers' strike that took place in August of that year. In 1977, he was sentenced to life imprisonment at Robben Island. Gwala became known for his Marxist-Leninist teachings, particularly among the youth while at Robben Island. While he was in prison, his wife, Elda, passed away, but he was not allowed to attend the funeral.
When you talk of people who just talk war, the Natal Midlands, people who don't want peace. I was asked if I've ever gone to David Ntombela to shake hands with him. I'll be the last man to do that. Moy River, almost 4 weeks ago, David Ntombela was there conducting his armies, which murdered our people. Not a word from our own organization saying he is the man of peace, because Ntombela is called now Peace Lord. As I'm speaking to you, he lives in a motel just next to Moy River, conducting operations there against our own people. They carry all assortment of weapons. But what do? We say it is violence, it's not a war of liberation.
Gwala took charge of the ANC in the Natal Midlands during a challenging time. He was released from Robben Island on November 26, 1988 due to declining health, having developed motor neuron disease and lost the use of both arms. He did not relish his newfound freedom, as he found himself plunged from one dire situation into the turmoil of the conflict raging in the Midlands region and other areas of the province. To understand Gwala's anger and the militancy that marked his life during the late 1980s and early 1990s, it is essential to examine the context in which he operated at that time. From approximately 1987 to 1994, the apartheid government unleashed violence on black neighborhoods in Pietermaritzburg and its surroundings. The city became a central hub of brutal and intense destabilization. Nearly every village and township felt the impact. This violence also extended to other regions in the Midlands, including Table Mountain, Newcastle, Greytown, Moy River, Richmond, Howick, and further south in Cato Ridge. The apartheid regime referred to this conflict as black-on-black violence. The direct role of the apartheid state was established in 1992 when Captain Brian Mitchell and 7 police officers were convicted and sentenced for the murders of 11 individuals and the injury of others on October 15, 1988 in Trustfield in New Hanover, near Pietermaritzburg. Gwala's key task after being elected chairperson of the Midlands ANC was to rebuild the ANC structures following the unbanning of the organization. He crisscrossed the region, launching new ANC branches. He used the meetings to deliver political education through his speeches to the new members. He was a renowned political educator and theorist. Meetings with him often turned into a political education class. He could also impressively engage audiences in debates on Marxism, eloquently in isiZulu, no mean feat given the absence of isiZulu terminology for many of the concepts. His interview in isiZulu on the future of socialism following the fall of Eastern Europe, conducted on 12 March 1991 by former Presidency Director General Cassius Lubisi, is priceless. It is fortunately archived online. Although an atheist, Gwala also knew the Bible inside and out and quoted extensively from it in his public addresses. The Midlands region became the killing fields of then Natal, and the murderers were hardly ever arrested. National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa trade unionist Jabu Ndlovu, her husband Jabulani Ndlovu, and their daughter were brutally shot and eliminated at their home in Imbali Township on 21 May 1989. The following year, one of the most horrific attacks, the 7-Day War, took place on 25th to 31 March 1990 in the Edendale-Vulindlela area. 200 people were eliminated, with 20,000 displaced. In an interview with Lubisi by academic Ruth Lundi, conducted on 24 July 1995, Lubisi recalled how Gwala risked his life and was caught up in the crossfire in Ashdown Township on one of the days. Gwala had been told to stay at home and had refused to do so, and even with bullets flying around him in Ashdown, he still refused to leave the township, saying, "No, let's not go. If we die, let's all die here." Lubisi related another occasion in Estcourt when they were fired at by warlords and Gwala refused to duck or get away, saying it was important to understand what the opponents were doing in order to be able to plan a counter-offensive. The youth admired the fact that Gwala was willing to risk his life to be with them when they faced life-threatening situations. The killings persisted. In February 1992, Skhumbuso Ngwenya, United Democratic Front Regional Secretary, was shot and eliminated after attending a meeting in the Pietermaritzburg City Centre. In October 1992, the Midlands ANC Deputy Chairperson and Spokesperson, Reggie Hadebe, was assassinated. He was returning from peace talks with the IFP in Ixhobo. He had been traveling with John Jeffrey, who later became the Deputy Minister of Constitutional Development and then ANC Midlands Regional Secretary, and former Member of Parliament, Sheikh Cele. The assassination hit Gwala very hard, as he had been working closely with Hadebe. The story of the 7-Day War remains unfinished. Blaine Zimande, who was Regional Executive Committee member and spokesperson of the Midlands ANC at the time of the attack, wrote in 2010 during the 20th anniversary of the 7-Day War. We still hope that one day those policemen who were perched at the then notorious police HQ Davis Alexander House will have the courage to tell us about their role in the 7-Day War. Much as we do not want to open all wounds given the peace we have now, at the same time our history needs to be properly told as part of honoring those who fell during this period.
It all began on the 3rd of December after shots had allegedly been fired at the IFP-aligned hostels, injuring some of the residents. ANC members were killed in the skirmishes that followed, but the tensions boiled over into a full-scale attack the next day when hostel dwellers swept down into the township in the early hours of the morning. Ria Madladla's story is that of so many Bruntville residents who survived that terrible day. As the IFP men came into her house, she jumped out of the bedroom window with her children and hid in an outside toilet.
Ngase ngingaphakathi ke etoilet lapho ngathi ukuhlala ngabuye ngacabanga ukuthi ake ngiphume ngibheke laba bangaphandle ngase ngiyaphuma ngithi mangiphuma la ngithole lo mntwana lo Thando esewe phansi kodwa ngangibona ukuthi amehla akabhekile yena ukuthi ngangakwazi ukubona umuntu mayengasekho ukuthi usuke senjani bese ngiyaphuthuma ngoba ngangibona la ekhaya ukuthi kuyashunqa ngiphuthuma ngize la ekhaya ngithi mangithi ngiyadlula la eduze kwamasosha athi angibuyele emuva akekho umuntu ovumelekile ukuthi ahambe manje ngoba bazongibulala labantu bakhona bese ngithi mina akusenalutho noma bangangibulala ngoba ngiyazi ukuthi uma wami ungaphakathi akakwazanga ukuphuma manje ngizama ukuthi kungcono ngimthole noma isidumbu ngikwazi ukuthola isidumbu sakhe nokuthi sishe.
In another brazen and gruesome attack on 25th February 1991, the president of the Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa, Inkosi Mhlabunzima Maphumulo, was assassinated in the driveway of his home. The ANC leadership, Jacob Zuma, Alfred Nzo, Chris Hani, and Steve Tshwete, among others, met in Lusaka, Zambia, to discuss the mobilization of traditional leaders to advance the struggle in rural areas. As people were still reeling from the assassination of Inkosi Maphumulo, a reporter was approached by one Sipho Madlala, who confessed to having killed Inkosi Maphumulo on the orders of local security police. The story was page 1 lead on the Natal Witness newspaper, where the reporter was a political reporter. The man was also interviewed by Sbu Mngandi, then a journalist for City Press. An ANC security and intelligence team interviewed the man, tasked by Jacob Zuma, who headed ANC intelligence back then. The Madlala confession turned out to be full of holes. Inkosi Maphumulo had been spearheading peace efforts in Table Mountain and surrounding areas. As the violence escalated and claimed more lives, Gwala became angry and more frustrated. He disagreed with ANC headquarters in Johannesburg on the appropriate response. ANC headquarters promoted peace talks with Inkatha to contain the violence. Gwala was skeptical of the talks and dubbed as Omaqhawulana, the handshakers, all those who promoted them. He argued that they were out of touch with what was happening on the ground. His view was that promoting self-defense was a more meaningful response. Among the high-level national peace initiatives undertaken was the summit held in Durban on 29 January 1991, led by Nelson Mandela, who was then Deputy President of the ANC and then President of the IFP, Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Gwala attended the talks. He traveled to Durban with then SACP General Secretary Chris Hani, who had spent the night at his Dambuza home. They were not optimistic about the outcome of the talks, but had been directed to attend by Madiba. The adverse situation in the Midlands brought out the best in Gwala. His magnetic connection with the people became a distinct feature of his period as chairperson of the Midlands ANC region. He empathized with the people and gave them hope. He was a born orator, and mass rallies that he addressed boosted the morale of supporters. They were papered by Lubisi's spirited leadership of the Toyi and Tamim Seloku's beautiful melodic voice leading the freedom songs.
I only wish that those who are affected, who are involved in this violence, would be the people to discuss their own fate. What do? You mentioned the massacre, the so-called Gwashanga massacre, when Inkatha, loaded in buses, went there to attack the people. And the people gallantly defended themselves, killed more than 18 of the attackers, the warlords, and their men. What did our NEC say? We condemn the massacre. In other words, we're condemned for defending ourselves.
Madiba, with whom Gwala is reported to have had ideological sparring sessions on Robben Island, understood that Gwala would express his views even if they went against the official positions. In his moving eulogy at Gwala's funeral on July 1, 1995, Madiba recalled fondly of how the two of them had clashed on various issues. Gwala's message was always unambiguous and direct. Fight fire with fire. If they come with guns, don't give them Bibles, don't sing hallelujah, but nigeni squawquaqua, give them the sound of gunfire. Angered apartheid policeman was also expressed in typical Gwala fashion. He once became very irritated when he saw police at the stadium he was due to speak and shouted, "Ake ningibambeleni lilodwa, nililethela, ngiliqobe ngezinyawo. Grab one of them and bring them here. I want to stomp on him with my feet." John Jeffrey, who was affectionately called Jabulani Jeffrey by Gwala, would look visibly worried, pondering the legal implications. Former SACP General Secretary Charles Ngakula, who used to visit Maritzburg regularly during the conflict, described Gwala's oratory aptly in his tribute in 1995. He said, "Even in his last years, with his arms disabled, his neck encased in a brace, when Gwala stood up in a meeting, instant silence would descend. Maybe you were going to agree, maybe disagree, but you knew you were going to hear fireworks." Some call Gwala a warlord because of his war talk. However, Madiba understood the sharp tongue. He said in the eulogy at Gwala's funeral, "If Mpepetwa was sometimes too blunt, it is because he knew that the enemies of the people were spending sleepless nights to plot the undoing of their organization. If he was at times too harsh, it is because the system he opposed had threatened him with such inhumanity and disdain." The Midlands ANC rallies were also from time to time attended by Chris Hani and Winnie Mandela. Peter Mokaba joined a few of the rallies. Gwala adored their support and felt that they understood what the Midlands region was going through. Hani also went to Pietermaritzburg regularly to work on rebuilding SACP structures with Gwala, Nzimande, Lubisi, and Ben Martins. Hani's tragic and painful assassination dealt Gwala a heavy blow politically and personally. He delivered a brief but very powerful tribute at FNB Stadium in Johannesburg the night before the funeral. He had been irritated by commentary that followed the assassination, which painted a Hani he said he didn't know, one who was not a soldier or a communist, and he sought to correct the narrative. After Hani's passing, a dejected Gwala would often begin his speeches at mass rallies by saying, "Babe bathathu laba bantu, kwaku Harry Gwala, ku Chris Hani, no Winnie Mandela. Manje akasekho Chris Hani." There used to be 3 people, Harry Gwala, Chris Hani, and Winnie Mandela. Now Chris is no more. He felt dejected, lonely, and alone. He felt more alone and was deeply hurt when he was suspended by the SACP for 6 months in 1994. After the 1994 elections, Gwala became a member of the provincial legislature and was appointed ANC chief whip. He had lived to see the national general elections in 1994, which ushered hopes for a national democratic society that he had sacrificed a lot for. He was, however, unhappy with some of the compromises that were made during the transition to democracy and had spoken out against them. He had also been outspoken about his disagreement with the notion of turning the SACP into a mass party, arguing instead for the maintenance of the Vanguard Party status as the debate raged in light of the fall of socialism in Eastern Europe. He argued his case for Vanguard Party strongly in the African Communist, Fourth Quarter edition in 1991. He also opposed the suspension of the armed struggle